Hey, what's going on, my nerds and collectors alike? We are back again, taking a look at another figure from the Armadillo Build-A-Figure wave. Today we have Miles Morales. If you've been following the couple of reviews I've done, as you know, I will not be completing this Build-A-Figure, and this will also be the last figure of the wave that I review, just because I didn't want any of the other ones. But taking a look at the packaging here, Miles here is from the Gamerverse, which means he is from the PS5/PS4 game. On the bottom here, he is from Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Getting a good look up here, you can see some fine details on his suit. A couple of his accessories here. So we've got extra hands, we've got another head. Looks like we got some more fists down here. So Miles is getting a lot of hands. That's very nice to see. On the side of the packaging here, we have a nice image of his suit from the PS5 game. On the other side, we have the same image just flipped. On the back of the box, it appears to be the larger version of this image, showing off his Venom sting there. You've got your other figures that are down here in the wave. So, we've done Spider-Man, we've done Doctor Strange, we've done J. Jonah, and now we are doing Miles. Down here, you've got your warnings, legalese, not for children under 3 years. On the bottom, you've got your unreadables, barcodes, all that fun stuff. Miles here has a bio, which says, Miles Morales. When a fierce power struggle threatens to destroy his new home, Miles Morales realizes that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. So let's go ahead and crack this guy open and see what he's about. Alright, so here we have Miles out of the packaging. And as you can see, here we have on display one of his additional hands. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at that here in a minute. Go ahead and just pop that off of there. Plug in his wall crawling / relaxing hand or gesturing hand. It's always good to get these kind of hands in with a Spider-Man figure. They're definitely helpful. But bringing him in close here for some detailed analysis. We've got the nice texture on his suit. And they did go ahead and use some slightly raised webbing, which looks fantastic, all picked out in red there. The paint on this is very clean, which is always nice to see. And they used a nice, deep metallic red color that definitely pops against the black of his suit. Definitely a good choice. We get his nice spider logo there, which has the different enhancements. And we've got the kind of sharp V shape that leads to his cobweb pattern. On the back, you've got that bigger spider that looks like it's hanging down after making the web, which is very cool. You do keep the design of his suit throughout his butterfly joints here, and obviously across the shoulders, and then to the other side. There is a light texture all the way across this figure that you can see there. Very, very cool. On his abdomen here, we do have the extra web cartridges for his web shooters, which is always nice to see that Spider-Man come equipped with some additional webbing. You have some nice sculpted lines coming down along his legs here and kind of throughout the suit. On his arms, you've got lines running through just to give additional detail, make it a little more visually stimulating. You've got the same kind of design on the inside of the forearm here, which also is reminiscent of the Far From Home look for the upgraded suit, how he kind of has that wrap around and then there's black in there, which obviously Miles' whole suit is black, but you get what I'm saying. For the hands here, we do have his fingers individually picked out with red, and then on the back, his knuckles are also covered in red, which these do appear to be some kind of armor, so that way his hands don't hurt as much when he's punching people. Sadly, I'm on Xbox, so I do not get to play this game. So I'm not sure if these are padded more for his Venom sting. I know that's actually why he transfers to the black suit, is because his Venom powers keep destroying his suits, shredding them up because of the electricity. But yeah, you've got a nice armored look on the back of his hand there, which is definitely a nice detail. You do also get, out of nowhere, a nice red highlight on the back of his heel there, which, after all of this black leading down, It's nice to have just a little tiny pop of red right at the bottom. This guy definitely looks really, really good. The translation from the comic costume to on-screen in a way, because it's obviously a video game, is definitely nice to see. If they make an MCU Miles Morales, I would definitely like them to take some tips off of this, because in my opinion, I know that this Miles Morales is a PS5/PS4 video game figure, but this figure is detailed enough that you could get away with putting him in your MCU display without an issue. So if you want a Miles in your MCU, even though we don't have one yet, you get a hold of this guy, pop him in there, he'd go with it. If not, you could always put him with your comic stuff. You can put him in with your Into the Spider-Verse figures, so we'll have plenty of comparisons with those. Getting into articulation here. His head is on a dumbbell joint. Taking that off so you can see. Does seem to have a little bit of a bend in the back, just for some extra back movement there. So, Miles Morales, while he's masked, can look up fairly far. Can't look down quite as far, but that's alright. Of course, he does get side-to-side movement, and these dumbbells provide us with the ability to use magnificent tilt, which is very expressive, and they are getting better at making these more seamless, so it looks very nice just to have Miles kinda tilting and looking to the side there. His shoulders rotate 360. For some reason, my left shoulder doesn't rise as much as my right shoulder does, so my left shoulder only comes up that far, whereas the right shoulder almost reaches 90. Not sure what's going on with that there. Also, the butterfly joints don't really move that well. They kind of only get back that far, only go forward that far. But the way that his shoulder is sculpted there, even with the butterfly joints not working to their fullest extent, he can go ahead and get his arm across his chest. We do get a bicep swivel. We have pinless joints at the knees and the elbows. You get a double jointed elbow, which bends all the way up, so he can go ahead and touch his shoulder there in case he has to, so that's very nice. On all sets of hands, his wrist rotates and hinges horizontally, so it hinges in and out. For his ab crunch here, he can crunch forward quite a good bit. Always good to see a nice deep ab crunch on a Spider-Man figure. He can crunch back just as far, so it's good to see that Miles is nice and flexible. You do get a waist cut for your waist articulation there. At his hips, he can kick forward almost 90. Doesn't get a lot of kickback. He can kick out pretty far, so that's nice. Would like to see just a little bit of a deeper cut in there, try to get Miles kicking to 90, because, you know, Spider-Man need to be flexible, but compared to what we used to get from Marvel Legends Spider-Man figures, that's still pretty good. We get a thigh rotation. And as I said, we do have pinless knees. And we do have a double joint at the knee, which kicks in also all the way, so Miles Morales can kick himself in the back. Very nice to see that Spider-Man is finally getting some flexible articulation. At the ankles here, his ankle can go back all the way. Can hinge forward pretty far, so that's also good. You can try to get him down in some crunching positions here. And of course, we do get the ankle pivot. So really the only thing that we could ask for on this figure for articulation is maybe some more range on the butterfly joints, since they don't really move that much. And it is always nice thinking about the retro-carded Spider-Man with the dumbbell joint, or not the dumbbell joint, the diaphragm joint with the crunch would always be cool to see. But for what we've got here, this is definitely a good try. He's got plenty of articulation, and I'm sure you can get him into different poses and move him around the way you need to. So getting into accessories here, Miles does come with an additional unmasked head sculpt. Bringing that in, you can see the nice painted brown eyes in there, and he's got his hair picked out. Would have been cool to see maybe a little bit of shading in the hair. I do know that this head sculpt is not actually accurate to, if it'll focus. There we go. I do know that this head sculpt is not actually accurate to the video game for some reason. I'm not sure why they went with a different head sculpt, but I guess close enough. I know a lot of people are upset about it, but being as I did not get the chance to get as attached to that version of Miles Morales as I did with other versions, this one looks alright to me. I did think about trying to take the Spider-Verse Miles Morales head sculpt here and using that on this body, which the head sizes are fairly similar. The only issue is, even if I remove the dumbbell joint from this cartoon, or the Into the Spider-Verse Miles' head, the ball joints are just completely different sizes, and I don't want to Dremel out this head sculpt and ruin the option of me being able to use that for the Spider-Verse body again. So, sadly, I'm stuck with this head. Although I am not too upset about it, I still think it looks pretty good. It's a nice representation of Miles. But I understand people are upset and they want their figure to be as accurate to the licensing as possible. It's understandable, I get it. Just, it doesn't bother me as much as it would other people, just because I have the limitation of my console and I haven't gotten to play the game. But, going ahead and swapping out the heads here, these dumbbell joints, they do scare me a little bit. It always feels like I'm flexing that too much and I don't want to break these figures. But at the same time, the neck is soft to kind of give leeway on that, but it's still scary to me. So just make sure you're being careful with your figure. I like to put, when I am done with the reviews here, just because I don't want a lot of gunk all over the camera, but I like to take these ball pegs, just give them a nice dunk into some Vaseline, make sure it's just a nice thin layer to kind of grease it up a little bit. Usually doesn't leave any mess anywhere as long as you're careful about it. And then use that to make the head swapping way easier. I will actually go ahead and give an example of that right now. On the No Way Home Spider-Man, which, yes, I did go ahead and add some web lines there. They're not the cleanest, but I think it looks alright. But with this head, I did add, as you can see, there's just a nice thin layer of Vaseline all around that peg, and his head swaps much, much easier now. And then you just pop that back on there without a problem. And there you go. Getting into his other accessories here, we do have multiple sets of hands. So first off, Miles has his wall crawling or gesturing hands. Of course, he gets thwipping hands, as all Spider-Men need. Miles gets a set of dukes for when you gotta do some spider punching. And last but not least, Miles gets his Venom Strike hands, which is an excellent addition, and I'm very glad that Hasbro decided to include these things. It's always cool to see that character-specific abilities get some additional effect pieces here. So as you can see, these are clearly designed to be the same gloved hand as the regular painted versions, just cast in a translucent yellow plastic with some lightning effect going down there. But these do look great, and it's a wonderful addition to have on a figure like this. I know even the GameStop exclusive, the translucent invisible version of Miles, also comes with some Venom Strike hands. Obviously those are cast in blue because it's meant to show that he's being invisible. But it's very cool to see the striking yellow on his suit when his powers are charging up. And it's definitely nice to have some Venom Strike hands for different pictures you might be taking of Miles using his abilities, as opposed to beforehand where you just had a Miles Morales costume, but as a regular Spider-Man release. So definitely cool to finally be getting some Venom Strike abilities for Miles here. wonderful addition on that end. We're going to go ahead and leave Miles with his alternate head sculpt and his Venom Strike ready to go here. And we will go ahead and get into some comparisons. First up is an obvious choice with the Into the Spider-Verse Miles Morales. As Spider-Verse is kind of what brought Miles back into the mainstream and opened a lot of people's eyes to the character. We will also go ahead and bring in the Ultimate Universe body, Peter Parker, which they did use also for a comic book, Miles Morales. When Spider-Verse first released, they actually reused this body with some cheap repainting to try to make a Spider-Verse Miles Morales figure, but in the end, Hasbro finally gave us that masterpiece of a figure. Sadly, I do not have the comic release of Miles Morales on this body, but that's what that would look like together. Taking those guys out of here and giving him a couple more Spider-Verse comparisons, just because he always needs some companions. Here is Miles with Spider-Gwen and with Peter B. Parker. So he's looking pretty good there. If you wanted to fudge Miles into a Spider-Verse display with these characters, he definitely sizes up. Obviously, his suit does look a little more detailed and cinematic than these guys, but it's fudgeable. And Miles always could use some friends. For our last couple of Spider-Verse comparisons here, because it is Miles Morales and Uncle Aaron is a big part of his story. Here he is with Uncle Aaron the Prowler from the Spider-Verse movie, and Spider-Ham, just because. What would Miles ever do without the mallet he gave him at the end, huh? So there he is with those two. Looking pretty good. Let's see what Miles is going to look like against the villain of the second Spider-Man PlayStation title here. We have Venom. I do not have the retro-carded Venom, just because I'm holding out for the non-con exclusive paint. I don't like the shell shading on that figure, and I'm hoping they'll release him with a couple of different head sculpts. Otherwise, that body looks fantastic for Venom. I'm just holding out. Here he is with Carnage, just because, why not have two symbiotes, huh? Carnage is giving me a little bit of a hard time here. There we go. So, looking pretty good against those. Carnage and Miles both have a nice slender style body. Carnage just has a little bit more bulk because it looks like muscle mass, but Miles is definitely looking good with them. Referring back to my MCU thought here, just because here we have Miles next to some MCU mainstays. We have Captain America and Iron Man. And yes, both of these characters are no longer in the MCU after Endgame, but they're big names, and it makes sense to kind of compare him just to get a side-by-side. So that's what he'd look like with them. We'll go ahead and get him compared to the MCU Peter Parker Iron Spider suit. Here is the Mafex Homecoming Peter Parker in his first tech suit. So, Mafex figure, funny enough, is looking really scrawny next to Miles, even though he kind of is fudgeable with other Marvel Legends figures. Taking him out of here and putting in the No Way Home integrated suit, you can see that Miles does stand taller than our MCU Peter Parker, but at the same time, kids are growing up, kids are getting taller, so it does make sense to have Miles be taller even if Peter's older. You can work that in there. Taking those two away, we'll go ahead and end on a couple of comic versions here, just because I never got lucky enough to pick up the PS4 Spider-Man suit, and I'm hoping they redo that suit anyway for the new sequel, because we're finally getting dedicated sculpts for some of those characters. So here is Miles next to the only piece of Spider-Man body that I possess, as well as the Retro Wave Spider-Man. So you can see that those Peters are both standing a little bit taller than Miles here. Retro card a little more so than the pizza-bodied future Spider-Man. but those are looking pretty good together. And finishing off here, I do want to say that this channel and all of its content are not for children under 13 years of age. Stay safe, everybody. Happy collecting.